are listening to WHOA Podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV Podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa! I am super excited about this episode, man. Mike, what's
You've
up?
been talking about this one for a while.
I have.
Yeah.
I've been trying to make this one happen for a little while, just so you guys know. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our guests because we'll bring them into our little banter a little bit. Maybe talk a little football and some of the things that are going on. But you guys, I want to introduce to you today on the show, we have Darin Cook, co-founder and co-CEO of Infinite Energy, a multi-state energy provider and a company that I admire so greatly. Darin, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We're Darin and I were talking about pulling out the scotch during halftime of the show. I mean, it's like it's gonna be great. So, well, we're super excited to have you. I don't know. I mean, you don't know this. I don't know if you know this. But you know our like blue ticket system that we do with our team members? So we have this blue ticket system, and throughout the course of the year, if they live up to the core values or do something that really stands out to us, like we'll reward them with this blue ticket. They bring the blue ticket to the holiday party. They can put that into like a bin at that time where we draw, and we give away like some really cool prize.
Cool.
It's been one time we gave
a scooter of their choice.
We gave a scooter
cash
of their
prize.
choice. Yeah, cash prizes. Now, I mean, it's not like $50,000.
No.
like I've heard that Infinite Energy does, but like
five.
But yeah, I mean, we've had like 4,000.
That's
you know,
pretty dang
no,
good.
I mean, we're like
no.
a little scooter dealership, Darin. I just want to like.
No, you guys. That's quite. That's
you got to start somewhere, right?
Yes,
it's
indeed.
but we did. I mean, the scooter. We did the scooter of your choice, and James picked that.
Vespa
I mean, it was like
$300.
$8,000 Vespa that one time.
For sure.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's
so
great.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was a thing that I kind of molded based off what you guys do at Infinite Energy during your holiday party that I've heard about multiple times. And it's, I mean, our culture has pulled a lot from y'all's culture as an example. So it's just really, really cool to be kind of sitting here and having the opportunity to talk with you today. So thanks again, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. I felt that, the reason why we do that, and probably why you guys do it, is that we want to have a real impact on somebody's life. So if you just give, $50, $100, just for a holiday gift, that doesn't really do much for somebody. But if somebody has the opportunity to win $50,000 or even $10,000 or $5,000, that can have some long-term impact on somebody's life and could possibly change it.
Yeah, no,
so
sure.
That's the whole idea, and it sounds like you guys are along that path. And it's not just the dollar amount; it's more about helping them get to the next level, maybe purchasing a house, which has happened before, or paying off a student loan, which has happened before. So you actually have a long-term impact on someone's life, and that's what it's all about, in our opinion.
Yeah, it's so cool. Well, I know before we like really get wrapped into the show here, I have to kind of like just go over here to Michael for about the LSU loss. Because you guys, all right, so real quick, because it's October, what's today's date? Today's October 15th. It's on the paper. I mean, put it on the paper. It's October 15th. This is going out November 4th. So by the time this airs, we would have played South Carolina, who lost to Georgia, which was...
Who beat Georgia?
Yeah, I'm sorry. South Carolina, who beat Georgia.
At home. At Georgia's home.
And so, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know if that's good. That's good for us, right? From an SEC standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, especially after the LSU loss, it evens things up.
Right.
A lot of people will say that they'd like Georgia to have the lapse against us. I mean, I don't know. I think it gets a little too far-fetched. But yeah, our game, look, it's disappointing to lose anytime. But for me, it's like that's as good of a loss as you can have. You go into one of the most, like, rabid environments in all of college football and go into the fourth quarter, have a lead.
Right.
And it just didn't end up shaking our way. Like, we had some injuries to overcome. It was a really good performance. I think that everyone would have been shocked. If you would have told me we would have scored 28 points, I would have been like, we have a good chance to win. If you would have told me we gave up 42 points, I said, no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
So it was a good enough game. I think we
played
still
well.
have,
It was really the interception that, like, I felt like that was the turning point.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you have to take more chances to win the game, and they end up going the other way. So,
Darin, are you a big football person?
Not as big as I once was, only because I don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
So I'll catch the Gator game.
I can't even imagine.
But I do catch the Gator game when I can, and I saw most of the LSU game, and it was disappointing, of course. But
well, hopefully by the time
we did well. So
hopefully by the time this airs, we
still have so much in front of us.
South Carolina, beat Georgia, and hopefully this goes out and we're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, everything is still right in front of them. At the end of the day, everything's still right in front of them. If they take care of business, they can go as far as they want to.
Yeah.
So.
There you go. But I am obviously a Gator. I went to UF and actually graduated from Gainesville High School. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a Hurricane and a Gator.
Are you an ACR? Like, have you been like?
No.
Okay.
My dad was military, but when he retired, he was a professor at the University of Florida. So we moved here when I was like 15 or 16. So.
All right, cool. Well, I want to get into your story in just a second, but before I do, I really want to say thank you to our sponsors. You guys, Opus Coffee has just been dedicated to us these last several episodes. You guys, we can't do this without the sponsors. They just really help fund all of this. And it was great because I know that you know Brad Gamble over at the Selling Factory. And he reached out to me or told me because I saw him earlier this week. And he's like, yo, I just want to let you know that I took our leadership team over to Opus Coffee, their new location.
Nice.
And had our leadership meeting there. And he was like, it was all because of the podcast. I was like, dude, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. So that was really, really cool.
I keep waiting for you to take me there. We'll schedule one of our meetings so we can go. No, that's not going to happen? Okay. Well, I guess I'll check it out on my own.
You have a lot of work to do around here.
Yeah, somehow I keep having meetings with you, and they're not at Opus Coffee, so I don't understand.
We'll make that happen. We'll definitely make that happen. So I just want to say, Tim and Brett Larson, thank you so much for your support. You guys, go check out their new location. It's at 800 Southwest 2nd Avenue, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's a great meeting spot. So if you have your business meetings and et cetera, go there and check them out. So now, I'm ready to get into the meat of this story. I'm so excited for this. So, Darin, what we like to do is start off with the origin story. I know you've probably told it a million times. And do you ever get sick of telling the story?
No, actually, because it always excites me.
Okay.
Quite frankly, because when you start a business and something cool happens, I don't know. It's just like an old favorite story. So,
okay.
No.
I've been speaking 4 or 5 times in the last month over at UF, and it's always tell your story and then kind of get into the questions and stuff, which I love to do. My favorite part is actually Q&A when I go and do it, speaking with students and stuff. But I found myself trying to make my story shorter because I'm it seems like it's getting longer and longer. I mean, I keep adding more years and starting new businesses and doing all these things. I'm all right, I got to figure out how to
hit the bullet points.
Yeah. So anyway, let's start with your story. Tell us. I mean, I'm super excited just to hear about. I mean, I don't even know the thought of planting a seed that turns into a $500+ million revenue company just is mind blowing to me.
To me too, by the way.
So,
because you don't know you're going to get there.
The fact that you planted that seed and it's grown into this huge thing with this huge impact. I mean, it's just incredible. So please tell us your story.
Certainly. Yeah, well, it all started back when I was hired by GRU to be a natural gas buyer. The industry had just restructured where basically deregulated, where you wouldn't GRU was just used to buying from one source, a pipeline basically, and then they restructured it such that you could buy your own gas from anywhere and then transport it on the pipeline. And so it's a whole new way of doing things, so to speak, much like when the telephone's deregulated. So So that's what I was hired to do. I didn't know anything. I had to read tariffs. I had to read, which are books 200 or 300 pages on the rules on how to transport natural gas, and then So I did that, and then we figured out how to do that, and we figured it out how to do it better than anyone else, at least in Florida. And my business partner, Rich, came on a couple months after I was hired to do the financial accounting of that new way of buying gas. And I do remember specifically one deal I did for GRU that was for a unit of natural gas is called a decatherm, and that's basically the energy that natural gas has. Anyway, it was 30,000 decatherms a day. It saved about 15 to 20 cents a decatherm. So you're talking around $4,500 a day for 20 years. Talking, almost $20 million over that 20 years. And I got a pretty good review that year, but I earned 1% raise. And so Rich and I were traveling, and we said, man, we could do this ourselves. And next thing you know, we were back home writing our business plan. We'd play racquetball first, which, by the way, I found out later that studies show that 25 minutes of aerobic exercise increases your IQ up to 10 points. So we were doing the right thing. We didn't even know that. We were all sweaty, of course, but we're writing the business plan, and 3 months later, we had the business plan done. Then we got rejection after rejection for the next 2 years until finally someone gave us some credit support. And we were off and running in 1994. At that point, we were profitable within 3 months. And when I say profitable, I mean not only did we pay back that month, we made money, but we made enough money to pay back all the startup money that we had already gotten. So that's how we started, man. And I got to tell you, I was very fortunate to run across Rich because I trust him completely, and vice versa. We couldn't have done it without each other. We both have different strengths and weaknesses. I'm more of a technical numbers kind of guy, and he's a relationship guy. So he was able to bring in possible customers. I was able to find arbitrage opportunities, and so that's how we started, man.
Okay, so did you guys, when you were getting this thing off the ground, did you hold on to your jobs at GRU?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You guys literally walk in, throw the paper down. You know what? We're just going to go leave and start our own.
That's pretty much. That's once we got the credit backing. Well, we were very successful at GRU in saving a lot of money or making a lot of money for them. So it wasn't like we were going out into the unknown. We were doing it already. We felt if we had the right credit backing, we could do it again. But we didn't have a lot of confidence from the folks at GRU, and they were very nice about it. They said, like one guy said to me, hey, if it doesn't work out, we'll still hold your job 6 months from now. If if it's within a year or whatever, you can come back.
Did they know what you were doing?
Yeah, I guess they sort of did. We weren't known as Infinite then, by the way. We were known as C&B Olympic. Olympic was our credit backer. C&B was for Cook and Blaser, which is our last names, of course. And so the industry had a name for us in the beginning. Oddly enough, they called us Crash and Burn. I don't know why. That's what I'm saying. There was no confidence. And that's one of the things as an entrepreneur yourself, people, they can be nice about it, but they don't think you're going to succeed. They always think you're going to fail, and you just have to overcome that negativity and just have a belief and persistence, man. That's what got us through. And with 2 years of rejection, I'm telling you, man, it took a lot to get there to even start the business. But once we were started, I call it coiling the spring. We had a lot of potential energy, and we turned it kinetic. We just went right to it.
So is that like 2 years of rejection on, for the majority of the deals? Because you said you're profitable in 3 months. So
we were, but no. When I say 2 years, I'm talking about finding a backer so that we could start the business. We couldn't start the business till we got credit backer because we were we did $13 million, I think, our first 8 months or the first fiscal year, so to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, say that one more time.
We did $13 million of revenue in our first fiscal year. So when you're doing that much, you can't, my credit card can't pay that much. So I've got to have a credit backer that says, hey, these guys will pay their bills. And that's what we needed. So
was that the biggest reason for all those rejections, was just that that exchange, or was it the viability of the business plan?
The viability, I mean, think about it. Okay, this is 25 years ago, so I'm a young 28. I'm weighing like 130 pounds at that time. Looked like a kid, like
playing
just out of college,
like no other,
playing
though.
racquetball. Rich is you know, he's you know, his first calling was to try to be an actor, and he was a male model at one point, and then he did his financial accounting. So, you know, he's getting gigs doing that on occasion, you know, even while we started the business. But so we're just, you know, we're really young guys, and it's like, you know, well, who are these guys? So it took us a while to find somebody, but then we found somebody out in Texas who believed in us, and they had a pipeline that went into Florida Gas Transmission, which is the pipeline that services Florida. So they thought that they would have some access to sell natural gas if they hooked up with us, and sure enough, that's how we started, man.
That's so crazy. So at 13 mil in the first fiscal year, right? I mean, how quickly did you guys grow in terms of like team members and that kind of thing? Because now, I mean, today, which is, I mean, you're 25 years in at this point.
That's correct.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, it happened in May, by the way.
Awesome.
Yep.
25-year anniversary. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you have over 300 people now?
That's correct. 300
okay.
people.
So, I mean, how many people did you have in that first year?
We had, when Rich and I started, it was me, him, and a temp help. And it stayed, I think we hired someone full-time that first year, got rid of the temp help and just hired somebody full-time. So we had either three, after 1 year, we had 4 people.
Okay.
So,
I mean, at what point did it, like... blow up? I mean, because were you guys like, I mean, you were the active sellers and stuff at that time, right? Like you and Rich.
Yeah, me and Rich. I mean,
where did the transition happen where you go from like, all right, sell the salesmen to CEOs?
Well, let me say it was funny because we actually had several business cards. So maybe we weren't just 3 or 4, because I had 3 myself, and Rich also had 3.
What, with different titles on them?
Different titles on them. Yep. Because if you're buying or selling gas, you don't want to be the president of the company, right? It's like you'd save that for like credit backers or whatever.
Okay.
So
perception is a funny thing.
It
right?
is, isn't it? Like I remember someone would call and say, "Can I talk to somebody in accounting?" And Rich would answer the phone, and he'd say, "Hold on one second," and then he'd look around.
Yeah, I totally done that.
Say, accounting department, Rich Blaser, can I help you? It's like, you know, it's so.
That's hilarious.
But then I would say, really, it's funny you mentioned that, because when you have 3 or 4 people, we didn't title ourselves CEO, but you see all the startups saying CEO of some, and they have 3 people or 2 people,
right?
But I would say when we went into retail, which, you know, we were wholesaler at that time, but when we started going into retail, we grew from, say, 25 to 30 people to 370 over the next 3 or 4 years after we did that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like it was a big growth curve at that point. I would say it, you know, when I mentor people, I tell people it's, you know, I'm just like you, only I've got battle scars. I've got experience, which means I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned from them. And when you're growing that quickly, you just can't help but learn from your, you know, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn from them, and you're going to do better. So I think that's what really got, I would say at the end of that, I started with Rich also. I would say we were more of a CEO at that point.
What things were you doing to like control that growth, I guess, in a way? I mean, I just think going from, you know, I don't know, even like 30, 50, 100 employees to like 370. Like, I mean, like I kind of strange. Like, I know it would be exciting, but I strangely fear it because I wouldn't want to mess that up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like, were there any processes? Were there any things that you guys were doing? Was there any mentorship? Was there anything like, what things did you guys do to make sure that you were able to expand?
Well,
correctly?
one of the things is you have to be able to let go. That's a biggie. One of the things I loved doing was trading natural gas. That's I love to trade. When I was a little boy, I mean, I bought my first stock when I was 9 years old. It's like, so that's my passion, right? But I had to give it up. If I want, as you get bigger, I can't just always have my hand in one department. I've got to actually lead. I've got to set direction. We've got to motivate. We've got to do all those things. And that doesn't include trading for me, and it doesn't include accounting for Rich. We just had to, set that aside, and we had to find another love. And fortunately, the other love I have is helping people grow, helping, one of my favorite things to do is take something from in my head and make it happen. But now I'm teaching people how to do that themselves and how to be leaders and how to, do that. So it's sort of like, I think you have to have like a biofeedback mechanism that sort of amplifies what you are internally to the outside world and to the company in general. Oh, and that's what culture is all about, I think, right? So I think that's how you do it. It was sloppy. It wasn't pretty. It was pretty ugly, actually, when you're growing that quickly, because sometimes, you don't have the time necessarily to choose the best person when you're growing that quickly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just need somebody to answer the phone, right? It's like, so it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, I'm saying.
But the fact that you even say that, we're like going through that problem right now. Like we got because we set up like just an automated thing to help people get to where they need to go, whether it's sales, service, or whatever. And then I'm kind of like, man, like I hate this. Customers hate it. They just want somebody to answer the phone, and like I'm like, we just need to hire a full-time person to answer the phone, and like it'll be more customer centric. And so now we're kind of backpedaling.
It is interesting because once we got to 370, that was our peak in employees. We're now at about 310 to 320.
Okay.
But we've actually doing so much more business than what we did then. But we were able to, once we got stability, from that fast growth mode, we were able to, okay, now we can really keep the best people. We can take the time to, I say weed out those that aren't fitting in and don't share the same values that we do. And,
absolutely.
And so now I think our team is, with less people, we're doing so much more. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, what's it like now, looking back over 25 years and seeing that seed that you planted like turn into this? I mean, like what's the most rewarding moment out of all of it?
Actually, the most rewarding moment for me is seeing somebody who I hired as a 21, 22-year-old become a leader, become an executive over the next 15 to 20 years. I mean, cool. That is really cool, just seeing the growth of somebody. That's really rewarding. It's also really rewarding to be an innovator and to do things that no one else is doing in your industry, setting the curve, so to speak. That's really rewarding to me also.
Was there?
But I don't look at, it's funny because I never look at what we are now versus then. I look at what we can become. That's what I'm always focused on. And I'm sure you're very similar. What are we going to be in 5 years? What are we going to be in 10? What's the next big thing? What are we trying to do? So that's really my focus. So I don't like to, say, oh, you did a good, because I don't think we're done. You haven't done a good job until, I say, okay, I'm a little old now. I might as well retire. And that's far away from now. So it's like, so I'm not ready to rest.
I'm the same way. I don't even, we talk about like even stopping to celebrate the wins. Like I have a hard time stopping to celebrate the wins because like I'm just on to the next goal, just so focused on the future.
Yep.
So, I mean, y'all's nickname was Crash and Burn. Did you ever C and B? It's fun. Side note, with Rich and Rich Blaser and Mitch Glazer doing the text.
Blaser and Glazer.
I'm just like, dude, that is so epic. Like the fact that y'all's names like rhyme like that. It sounds like a law firm. I'm like Glazer and Blazer. Like, let's go. So okay, back on subject. I mean, was there ever a time in those 25 years where you had like the legitimate worry? Okay, like, oh my gosh, we got to fix this or we are going to crash and burn? Like, was there ever like that failure that was kind of looming?
We've failed, but we've never failed big. And that's one of the things that I talk about. I'll ask an interview question sometimes. If you had a 10% chance of doubling your profit, say from $5 million to $10 million next year, and say a 5% chance, you might make a little money or lose a little money. 85% chance of doubling your money. I'll reverse that. And a 5%, make a little money, or a 10% chance of going out of business. If you do this deal, would you take that deal? And I'm looking for, especially if you're a company of like 300 people, when you got nothing to lose, sure, you do it. But when you have 300 folks, it's like that 10% is way too high, because it's just like poker, getting the bad, you have pocket aces and someone beats you with 2-3. It's like, if you keep making those all-in bets, even if the odds are for you, you're going to lose everything. Mm-hmm. So we never try to, that's one of the lessons we learned fairly early on, is don't bet at all. And when you do that, you always have something in reserve to fight another day. But there were a lot of unforeseen circumstances, fates, so to speak, that threw at you that could have put us out of business. For instance, the first big scare was when Enron went out of business, which, if you're old enough to remember, was a huge natural gas and electricity company, but completely unethical. And it caused a lot of problems in our industry. And so finding credit backers was very difficult at that time because of that. The industry was going through a big problem. The banking crisis could have been another possibility. Think about, we were banking at SunTrust, but what if we were banking at one of these banks that went out?
Right.
Yeah, when we're putting through millions of dollars, every month, and I get a guarantee of $200,000 or whatever if they went out, and due to no fault of our own, we could have been out of business, right? It's like, so we've been very fortunate. Fortunately, SunTrust didn't go out of business. And fortunately, the government stepped in and saved the banks that were too big to fail. And I wish capitalism could have worked and they could have failed, but if they did fail, it would have brought a lot of people like ourselves down with them that really had nothing to do with what was going on in that crisis. So there were several points along the way that were I call it a conspiracy of circumstances that could have put us out of business, but fortunately they didn't.
Were there any times where you had a decision to make as a CEO, but the outcome wasn't going to be really great either way? Yep.
Remember I said we had our business partner, Olympic. We were C&B, they were Olympic. They sold their company in 96 to somebody who was unethical.
Okay.
So how do we get out of that arrangement? And we let it ride for a year despite some of the signs that they were completely unethical, but they left us alone. We were doing our thing. But then we found out they were taking money from our lockbox because they had control of it, borrowing it without our knowledge, putting it back so we didn't see that they had borrowed it. Wow. And so we had to extricate ourselves from that position. Fortunately, we had a contract where we could. We had a put-call provision where we could make an offer to buy their half, and they either had to accept it or buy it from us at that same price. And I actually teach this as a case study at UF. I always ask, which would you do? Would you offer low or offer high for the other half? And we knew they were going to go under within the next 4 or 5 months, we felt, because we'd gotten some calls from the industry that said they owed a lot of money. So we went low. We said, look, we have our intellectual property, which is me and Rich's brains. So we were still a smaller company at that point. Let's let them just buy it cheap. They need Sun Tzu in The Art of War says, never surround your enemy, leave them a way out. And the reason why is when you leave them way out, they run and you can pick them off as they run. Well, if we didn't leave them a way out, it would have been a lot of lawsuits going back and forth, but that would have put us out of business. That's another possibility where we're going to have business
Yeah.
And so we left them way out. They bought us cheaply. Then we changed our name to Infinite because they kept the C&B name, even though it was Cook and Blaser and they weren't Cook and Blaser, but still. So that's when we changed our name, and we used our parent company, which owned the half of the joint venture, changed that to Infinite. And that's how we became Infinite. And they were the main company that they were. Olympic went out of business as we expected 3 or 4 months later. The new company that they had, C&B, didn't last but a year. But the cool thing is, it was actually one of the best things that happened to us because we went from 50% ownership to 100% ownership. And we just basically restarted in 1997 with 0 customers again, and got another credit backer, but we had a good reputation. But that was
and you were 3 years in, right?
Yeah, that was 1997.
3 years in, even more experience.
Yep. Yeah.
Had to start all over.
Yep. So
the story sounds strangely familiar. It reflects a lot on my story.
That's interesting. But the thing is, it's like I tell people it sounds like we were really smart to do what we did. But we knew probably within the first week how unethical they were.
Yeah.
But they left us alone. Like I said, we were doing our own thing. And we should have started making preparations to leave immediately. And that I know, I learned from experience. It's like if you do never, an unethical partner or even an unethical employee can bring you down, or they'll steal from you or whatever. So it's just a matter of when. So you have to make that decision as soon as you know. Start preparing. Hey, I need to get out. So.
Yeah. Dang. All right, let me shift gears a little bit. I've always been super curious as to, has there been any strategy behind the co-CEO thing? Like you and Rich being co-CEOs, why was there any, why not CEO, COO, or why not just...
Well, yeah, if Rich were here, he'll tell you the story. Okay, so when we started the business, our lawyer asked you who's going to be, at that time it wasn't CEO and co-CEOs or anything, who's going to be president, who's going to be vice president, because we have to put it down on the state form.
Yeah.
So we said, I don't know, we didn't even think about it. And then he said, well, who's older? And I said, well, I'm 2 years and 2 days older than Rich, so I got to be president and he got to be vice president. And we had thought, well, we'll just switch it out every 3 or 4 years or whatever, who cares? And Rich, if he were here, would say it never got switched back.
Okay.
But at some point, like I said, when we actually were CEOs, in practice, we both took on a co-CEO role. Rich and I are very different people, so there's certain departments that he would run better than I would run, so to speak. So he took those, I took the other parts, and that's why we were co-CEO. And like I said, we have a very similar value chain. And some people will always ask, you haven't asked it yet, how do you decide if how do you decide if you both disagree on something, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting
For
way,
sure.
right? Is that so? So, co-CEOs, who's going to win, right? In that regard, well, we don't look at it as a win-lose. What we look at is if let's just say I want to go into electricity and he didn't, who wins that argument? I explain why we want to go into electricity. Here's the, here are all the cases. If he says no, the no vote gets 2 votes. That's how we decide things. And then what that does for me is I haven't given him enough information. I have to study it more. I have to look at it more. And then I can bring it back to him. And if I'm not willing to do that, then it probably wasn't a good idea anyway, right? So that's how we decide things. So the co-CEOs, now Rich is basically, we'll talk about it later, but heading up trying to get this electricity choice going in Florida. And so I'm basically, running the company on a day-to-day basis, and he's doing that because that's his strength, is relationships, politics, all that stuff. So it's working out that way too.
So have you ever been completely locked up in opposal?
We have. Well, we've had disagreements, but as I said, in the end, we don't get mad at each other because, if someone says no, I trust that even if he can't communicate why, that he has some sort of intuition. He has different strengths than I do, and maybe he's seeing or feeling something that I'm not seeing or feeling, because I'm looking at it perhaps more just on an analytical side. Maybe he's seeing it's a distraction or whatever. So we've never really gotten into huge arguments, because once we come into this, back and forth, it stops. It's like, okay, I'll try to get you some more information to overcome your concern. Or if I don't, then we just move on. I tell people there's lifetime opportunities happen every day. It's just a matter if you're prepared and able to execute on those things. Ideas are, a dime a dozen. It's what you do with them that counts. So it's like, so there's going to be something else that comes along. It's like, this isn't going to be the one thing that sets us, apart. We're going to have other ideas and other things we can do. So it's just a matter of which ones we choose to do.
Right.
So
is there anything that you guys do as partners to like really keep your relationship healthy? I mean, do you guys ever do like a little breakaway session? Or, I mean, like, I don't know. I was in a partnership in the very early days of my business, and it failed after a couple of years. And ultimately, I know that we just had different visions for the company. We weren't on the same page. So like, what can business partners do to ensure that they are always on the same page, heading the same direction, and keeping their relationship extremely healthy?
We communicate a lot, man. It's like, there's no secrets. There's no, it's like, I'm not ever trying to hide anything from him, and vice versa. Like I said, in the end, it comes down to, do you have the same values, and do you trust the other person? If you trust the other person, you don't have to worry about anything, man. It's like, they don't have devious agendas, right? So, and that's one of the things I teach when I'm mentoring. It's like, there's a book I recommend, The Science of Trust. So it's like, how do you get trust and give trust? And fortunately, we've had that for 25 years. I think if you look at, rock bands, most of them flame out within a couple of years, right? It's because in the end, they don't trust each other. They have different agendas or different visions. But the ones that stay, like the Rolling Stones or those others, obviously they have a cohesive trust foundation, and everyone knows their part. And Rich and I know what our parts are in the business, and we don't have envy. Oh, he's getting to do this, or I'm getting to do that. Right. No, we have, the company is what's important to us, and we both are trying to do what's best for the company.
Yeah. You guys obviously know what you're doing.
We've been very fortunate. Like I said, I mean, the luck plays a big part. I ran across Rich. I didn't, know all this stuff about ferreting out values and all that back when I was 20. I think I was 28 when we started the company, and we started the business plan when I was 26. So it's like, it was just seemed to work well and do well together.
It was meant to be, man.
Yeah, it's just fortunate.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. I hear that you're an avid chess player.
I am. I don't do, when I was in college, I played a lot of tournament chess. I got up to an expert level, but now I just do it for fun, speed chess all the time, and then I teach chess once a month at the company.
Okay,
So,
you do. That's so cool.
yeah.
One of your team members, Marsh Sutherland, shout out Marsh. He told me I should play you like on the show, like put a chessboard right here. I was like the longest episode ever.
No,
like watching paint dry, right?
Yeah.
I think he'd probably have you beat pretty fast.
Really
Well,
fast.
we could do it.
I don't play chess.
I for inexperienced players, I'll do I'll have 5 minutes to 1 minute to finish the game, and they'll have either 5 or 10 depending on how experienced they are. So
okay. I mean, is there do you pull it into business world at all? Like, do you look at business as like the strategy? Like, is it a big game of chess to you, or?
It is actually. I call myself. There's many types of entrepreneurs. I call myself an incremental entrepreneur, which means I have a good solid position. Every move that I make, I'm trying to give myself more probabilities. And it's always built off of a position of strength. Some entrepreneurs go into 10 different things, and that's fine. I call those more of the serial entrepreneurs. Whereas for me, it's like, here's a good position. Now, why am I going to go into electricity if I'm only natural gas? Well, I'm very strong. This is why we did it, by the way. I'm very strong in building apartment complexes, and we have apartment complexes that are begging us to go into electricity in Texas. So I already have a strength to build on. I can make a billing system better than anybody else's for billing them. I just got to learn this other thing, electricity. So that's why we went into electricity, right? We built on a strength we already had. to do it, as opposed to like, hey, I'm Infinite Energy, let's start a clothing line. That doesn't make any sense to me, right?
Yeah.
So everything we do is built on a position we already have. And if we're going to go make a move, I want more probabilities that can come out of that direction we're going. So if I don't want to go to even if it's on a strength, I want to go this way, but it only locks us into one way forever. I don't want that. I want something that's going to provide a lot more probabilities.
So interesting. Do you and Rich ever play chess together?
Actually, we have, but more as I taught him a few strategies. He got a lot better. He's able to beat most people now, so it's pretty cool.
But you can destroy him.
Well, it would be like me playing tennis against Rich. He would destroy me in tennis. Now, racquetball was another story. It's like we were I was crushing him at the beginning, but he's such an athlete at the end, he was beating me. So it was like, it's sort of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, partnership. I just want to make sure, like, still a little bit of internal competition is good.
Yeah, we don't do that enough. we really don't.
You and I need to compete more.
Yeah, probably.
I feel.
I just don't want to play Monopoly against you, but I'll do anything else.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. I need to make sure that I can.
He wants to make sure he can win.
He can win.
That's really it.
Rich and I like to make bets every once in a while, and they're always $1, and sometimes the bet is fun for me because I'll make him do all this work, and even if he wins, it doesn't matter because he's got to do all this research and all this other stuff. So it's like,
that's hilarious.
But he made a bet once to me. It's like he's giving me a point spread on a football game, right? And I want 3.5, and he's saying no. I can give you 3. No, I need my 3.5. And that's it. Finally, this is for $1 against somebody. I made the bet for 3, and he said, "Okay, I won." And I said, "What?" He said, "The game was played last night. It was 3 points."
Oh no!
It's like,
no!
Oh my gosh!
So it's like
it's $1,
right?
Yeah, but it's that dollar is worth so much. It's such bragging. I mean, he's lived that.
I just picture guys who built this 500 million plus revenue business betting $1. Like, I love it. That's absolutely hilarious. Well, let's spin.
Where do you want to go?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, literally, these are the episodes where I could spend 3 hours and just get everything answered, because I just have so many questions. But let's talk about Gainesville a little bit, because I think what's super interesting to me is that, I mean, you guys have this incredible company that's right here in Gainesville, and I think sometimes people are kind of wondering why.
Okay. Well,
none of your service is in Gainesville.
That's correct. We have 0 customers in Gainesville.
0 customers. You have 0 customers in Gainesville.
That's correct.
Whereas, like, 99% of our customers are in Gainesville, right? So, like, you have zero customers in Gainesville. I mean, why keep the business in Gainesville?
Mainly, it was because, in the beginning, it was because we were a wholesaler, right? So we had our biggest customers were like folks like Jacksonville Electric Authority, Tallahassee, TECO, which is in Tampa, Florida Power and Light, which is a little further down south. So those were our big customers, and Gainesville's right in the center. So if we needed to make road trip, it was, anything was mostly within 2.5 hours. Now, why did we stay to Gainesville after, we became much bigger? We had basically we could select from employees because of the University of Florida such great talent that most of them were moving away, but we would be able to get the pick of the litter, and we definitely have a huge University of Florida contingent that works for Infinite Energy, and
That's awesome.
and it's helped us grow because really what we do requires a lot of intellectual capital, so to speak. And we need really smart people. We need driven people, and you can't beat the University of Florida. What can I say?
Yeah,
They may have lost to LSU, but man, I think our students, from a brain power standpoint, would beat them upside the head. So,
what's the key to recruiting those people to stay, though? I mean, is it compensation from a salary standpoint? I mean, we talked about the culture stuff. Like, I find it's hard because you get a lot of people that graduate and they want to get out. Like they want to go chase bigger cities and stuff like that. So how do you recruit them to stay?
How do we? Well, you're right. There are people, and still over 98% do leave, and that's fine. But think about those that still you got 35 to 40,000 students, right? If 2% stay, you're talking about 800 possible folks, right? It's like so. It's so you still get a lot of possibilities, but we do some things that others didn't. Like I think it was like 4 years ago, we started paying a minimum salary even for startup jobs of $15 an hour. We get, and especially in a tough job market, we get folks that from the University of Florida graduated starting our customer care center, answering phones. But guess what? They're in the company now and they have a chance to grow. And if the culture is good, if they have skills, they can move up. So it's like, I think that's how you do it. It's like, make sure you take care of the people, make sure that, it's a two-way street. Our culture is very good in that way. We're very diverse also. We have all sorts of different folks that from different cultures that come in. But as I said, we hire for values more than anything else. So you can have completely different personalities, different culture, whatever, from where you started. But if you have the same values that we're looking for, man, you're going to fit in.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I mean, you also have to give purpose. If you give purpose, most people will stay with a company if they feel that what they're doing is of value, right? We're doing big things, and each person hopefully knows their part in it. That's the key, right? And if they know their part in it, having purpose, decent pay, even if it's not necessarily the job you'd hope for to start with, that brings a lot to the table, and that'll keep you there.
Yeah. You talked about having like 370 employees and now being at this more or less sweet spot. You're bringing these people in at very lucrative onboarding pays, and then saying if they have a skill set, they can grow with the company. Is that path to promotion clearly outlined, or do people? Do they get stuck behind somebody?
Well, we give people lots of opportunities to improve themselves. For instance, most of our executives participate in mentoring employees. I take on myself up to six a year. It's a 1-year program. So that gives employees access to an executive for a whole year, right? They have to apply for it. They have to, answer the questions that we ask on the forum, that, because we go around robin and start picking, based on what we felt were top picks, So we give $500 a semester, up to $500 a semester for continued education on anything you want to take. It doesn't have to be specific to our job. We feel that people that have lots of different talents bring that to the table and create different types of ideas, okay? We have classes, used to be called Financial Peace. It's called something else now, where we show you how to budget so you can pay off all your debts. There are so many programs that we have that can help you improve yourself. So it's not just, is there a clear path, but can you get these skill sets? Can you be seen? Because you can have a skill set, but if you're not seen, it's also a problem, right? So you have access to an executive with some of these things that we're doing, or we have lunch and learns with an executive. We have all sorts of these things where you can get exposure to what we feel makes somebody successful, right? So
that's great.
When you were talking about purpose and people staying around because of purpose, especially as you grow, right? As you get to 300 plus team members, how are you able to continuously paint that vision as the co-CEOs of infinite energy in the future, and continuously instilling that purpose in your team members? Because I just feel like I don't know, because I don't. I hope that I have the honor to employ. I know it sounds strange. A lot of people are like, you want hundreds of team members? That sounds crazy. No, I do, because I believe that I can impact their lives very much the way you guys have. And so this is strictly for my own knowledge. That's what's so great about having a podcast. You can ask whatever you want. But I want to know how I can continuously communicate that vision as we grow. Like what things, whether it's tactics, or how does it trickle down from the top?
I gotcha. We do several things. Number one, we have, if you've been with us for 6 months, you get to have we call it a new employee lunch with Rich and I. Now, it sounds like just a lunch, right? But it's not. It's actually about 4.5 hours long. So you earn your lunch, so to speak. So we tell our origin story. We tell the 25 years, basically. That takes Rich and I at least 2 hours if we were to just go from beginning to end. 2.5, because every year, like you said, it adds to the story. But then Rich and I get to know each person. We ask them, we'll usually ask them, hey, give us a 2-word description of yourself, and we do it too. And then tell us what your goals are. How did you hear about the company? What's your hobbies? So that each person has, 5 or 10 minutes to talk about themselves as we go around. So we get to know people. What most people don't know, it's sort of like a mini interview almost. They don't realize it perhaps, but Rich and I are getting to know you, but that's, we come out impressed or whatever, based on how you answer those, those questions. So that's how we do it. Then we have, beyond that, we do once a month town halls. Okay. And then we have both a culture statement and a strategic statement. And the strategic statement these are our strategies, and we have basically 4. One is an unparalleled customer experience. One is employee engagement. One is the kind of markets we want to go into. So we structure our quarterly goals all based on that strategic vision. And each department knows, if we're depending on a certain department for a goal, they're on task, so to speak. They're on point, I should say. And then we either celebrate if we hit all we usually have 2 or 3 big goals each quarter that help us to that next level. If we hit them, we celebrate together, and if we don't, well, we talk about where our pain point was, and we'll try to do better. But having the company know we have a pass out of our strategic vision to every employee gets one, even when they just onboard. That's part of the human resources handout. We talk about it every time we put it up as a slide most of the time when we're doing our monthlies.
Does that strategic statement change often?
No. I mean, because they're basically they're directions, basically, and directions don't change often. It's like sort of like if you're a captain of a ship and you're going to from Europe to South America, you're not really going to change direction that often on your way, right? Things could get in the way, obstacles, and you may have to.
Often is probably not the right word, but I mean, can it change?
It can. Yes, it can. If we went into a new market, yes, it can. It's not,
it's not a lot.
It's not unyielding. But generally speaking, I've found, and Rich has found, that focus is what really gets a company going. Mm-hmm. And so it shouldn't change too often if you go on, because you never get any steam behind you. It's like a locomotive at first starts out. It's a lot of energy to start going. But once your inertia starts going, you don't want to stop the train at that point and go a different direction, right? Sure. It's like, so it shouldn't change too often is the point. So every person knows they're part of it. It's like, because of those goals. And then as far as culture goes, most of the time I'll take a few minutes and talk about a certain part of our culture statement and a concrete example of how something was lived up to it.
That's awesome.
So that's how we try to keep it from top down, trickling down. So, but you also have to have all your executives in line with, what's going on, and also living the culture, and they'll trickle it down. So it's just the way it is.
Easier said than done in my experience.
Well, hiring is the big key. It's all about the values, man. It's like, in the end, now, like I said, when you're growing at leaps and bounds, it's important to hire your leadership with the same values, but you may not have time to hire, you need people in the seat, so to speak. But if you get to a point like what we've done, you can take that time. Yeah,
I'm constantly fascinated by large organizations that do it right, because, we have 14 team members now, but we've had, 20 to 25 on average, and we've definitely had our challenges with healthy culture, just with that number.
Well, 20 is a big number. I mean, when you're under 20, you can sort of just do things by the seat of your pants, communicate, it gets around. But over 20, once you hit over 20, and I always say process is the devil, because you really don't want it when you're a smaller company, right? But you have to start putting in, I call them systems instead of process, but you better do, start putting in some systems once you get over 20. So that's just the way it is.
For sure. And in the macro, like we've been one of those companies where a lot of people look to us because of our company culture, and we definitely spend so much time on it and focus on it. And I love our company culture on the macro, but still, I know it's one of those things. I was talking about this the other day in the class I was speaking to, was, I'm like, it takes so long to build and find the right people, build a really healthy culture, but it really doesn't take that long for it to fall apart.
You're exactly right. You have a few that doesn't take but one poisonous person per 15 or 20 people to really impact you.
Right.
Negativity, it's like, so it's amazing how just one person can have such huge impacts.
Yeah.
Especially when you're smaller.
So I've asked this question to, we've done 78 episodes, and I've asked this question a lot. Thank you. I can't believe it's been that long either. This is episode 78. That's what I'm saying, right? Okay. So, there's our main purpose for this podcast is to build up Gainesville, right? Like, we've fallen in love with Gainesville. I've been here for 19 years. And the question that I ask most of the people that come in here, is, what does Gainesville need in order to reach its potential? Where are we missing?
I think we're on our way, actually. I think we needed a good startup foundation, and I think that's coming. I think because of that, we can be, and we're growing like a weed right now. When Rich and I started a company, there was nothing like that.
Right.
There wasn't even an entrepreneurial degree or anything like that. So, but all the stuff that's coming from the University of Florida in that regard, that's coming from, you have those innovation squares now downtown. I mean, I think that's what's going to really be the engine that drives Gainesville in the future. We're going to have some really cool companies. Actually, we have a lot of yours, for example. But there's a ton of them. Look at Brad Gamble's. Brad worked for us. I don't know if you know that. That's the other thing, by the way. You asked me earlier what I'm proud of or whatever. That's the other thing. We've had like 6 companies come directly from Infinite that have over 20 people.
Yeah,
and they're successful.
Feel so good.
It's like it's amazing to me. That means that we definitely have a culture of entrepreneurship, because companies are starting because of what they've learned at Infinite. And Brad's one of those. I'm super proud of Brad, by the way.
Yeah, he's doing incredible things. I saw him last night. Yeah. So your answer is that we're on our way.
I think so. It's like we have to get. I think we have to probably get an anchor. We have like Infotech or us. We have a few that are like 300, 150, 200. Sharp Springs I think they're getting up to 300. But besides the University of Florida, we don't have anything that's like, thousands, right? I mean, other than maybe city government or whatever. But I'm talking about from a company standpoint. And once you get a big anchor, then you're able to get middle managers. That's what Gainesville's lacking right now. Is we've had to grow most of ours. And that's tough. I mean, you have to wait. It's like, so I think that's probably what we're lacking the most, is that access to more seasoned people.
Okay.
We've been able to go outside sometimes to get some, like a few of our executives come from outside this area. But but most of it's been grown, like I said, internally.
That makes a ton of sense, because you were talking about talent and the ability to get talent right out of the University of Florida, but at the same time, like, that's very young talent.
It's green.
And so, and the other problem that I hear about is acquiring talent. And so when I'm like, okay, when I hear somebody talk about we got all this talent, and then I'm like, but we need to acquire talent. What we're specifically talking about is acquiring experienced talent to Gainesville.
That's correct. Yeah, that's, I think, what Gainesville is still lacking, and it's because we don't have a big universe of companies yet.
That's good. That's why we started this podcast. It's funny because I reflect. I hear all this stuff and I'm reflecting on the mission of this podcast, and it's like, that's it. Like, I want to retain our top 7 talent, more of it here in Gainesville. I want to build more connections between the businesses here in Gainesville.
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many people have sat in that chair and everybody's like, I never knew that company existed. It's like, what?
Wow.
That's happened. And then the ability for this to be broadcast and for somebody else outside of Gainesville to hear it and be like, that's where I want to move my company, or that's where I want to bring my talent. I want to go there, it feels good hearing these things. You're like, man, this is going to do it long term. So I'm excited. Yep. Spend a few minutes talking to us about this constitutional amendment petition form, which, by the way, I got a bunch of them filled out for you.
Oh, thank you. I brought a few just in case.
No.
Sounds like you did do something.
We're on our game, because last time I saw Rich, he gave these to me. I was like, dude, I promise you, I will get these filled out. But
are these the 2-page ones or the 1-page ones?
I think those are the 1-page ones.
Yes, they are. Very good. Okay, cool. Because they changed the form. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they changed the form, and the old form is no longer, government as the old form is no longer valid. So got to make sure somebody knows
talk to us about what you're trying to accomplish and what these forms are, and how our listener base can help.
Okay. Before I get too much into that, as I said, most companies, if you want to do something big, you got to have a focus on it. And I brought a quote with me. I'm gonna read it for this.
I love quotes.
This is a John F. Kennedy
Somebody
quote.
write this down.
This is John F. Kennedy. I can give you the.
Okay. All right. Cool.
But we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because the goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. I think that encapsulates any kind of entrepreneurial business. It's like you got to go for a big thing. There's all sorts of cool things that came out of that moon project that never would have happened if we hadn't done that. And so we're trying our big thing, which is this constitutional amendment to give everybody energy choice in the state of Florida. Basically, right now, it's all monopoly driven. Each monopoly has a service area, and you have no choice. I think that's un-American. I think it's, Teddy Roosevelt busted up the monopolies for a reason, because they're making an exorbitant profit because they have no competition. So that's what we're trying to do. We want to bust up the monopolies so that we can have choice. And if we do that, it's been shown that the energy choice state of Texas has saved about 20 to 30% on their energy bills. For Florida, that would be $6 to $7 billion a year. That's a lot of money. Take a look at your own bill. Knock off 20%. Is that worth saving? Yes, I think it is. But the cool thing is it also brings innovation. Because you have competition, just like anything else, it brings innovation. Now, for instance, in Texas, where they're completely restructured, and that's what we base this amendment on, 100% green product is less expensive than the cheapest power source in Florida. You can buy 100% green. They have since they restructured their market in 2001. They had approximately, both Florida and Texas were less than 2%, maybe 1% of renewable at that point. Texas has now got 24% of their power capacity is renewable. On average, they're averaging 18 to 20% of their power is made from green sources. Florida's less than 5% and 2% on solar. So people, if given the choice, want to do the right thing. They don't have to purchase 100% green. They purchase 10% green. They can do their bit, so to speak. But what's cool is because of this innovation, it's brought the solar prices way down. It's competing with natural gas now, obviously. So because of the mass production, et cetera, Texas is the largest green state now in the nation because of choice. we're able to give our customers in Texas their meter reads whenever they want it. We provide it once a week, so the bill is never a surprise to them. They know exactly where they're at. We have different products, like we can sell you a cheap product where if you use less than 1,000 kilowatts in a month, you get a cheap price. But they know where they're at, so they know it's not a surprise if they go over and pay more. It got hot, we had to really turn up the AC or whatever. So one of the things I know in Gainesville with our local utilities, people are surprised. Sometimes you get a 33-day read, sometimes you get a 28-day read. It's like you never know what your bill's going to be until it comes, right? But so you can't plan for it. So there's all sorts of cool things that we can actually pay people when prices get really high to shut their power down. Say, hey, we'll give you an incentive not to use power for these hours. Where's that happening in Florida? It's not.
Right.
So I think that's why we want the change. It would have a huge impact on both making Florida a green state. And from the sun, we're the Sunshine State for a reason, and also it would save consumers 20 to 30% off their bill, which I think is well worth doing.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing.
So what's the process like for you guys in order to make this happen?
We have to get 766,200 verified signatures by the end of the year. Right now, if you were to go on the website for the state of Florida, we have 479,000 verified signatures. So we're less than 300,000 to go. We actually have another 100,000 or so in the pipeline that hasn't been verified yet. So okay. We usually get about a 70% verification rate. So we're probably somewhere around the less than 200,000, maybe even better than that. So I think we can do it, but we need your help. Thanks for your help on this.
No,
I think it'd be. I think it could have a huge. Remember, I said we like to have big impacts. This would be a big impact in a positive way on our state.
That's cool. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for everything that you guys do. Thank you for being leaders in Gainesville, especially. I mean, companies like mine idolize companies like yours, so I just want you guys to know that. I'm super grateful for, this opportunity and the opportunity that I often get. I get to see Rich fairly often out and about. So, and every single time, I mean, like, for me, it's the kind of leader that I want to be. Like when I see you guys and interact with you guys, like it's just a reminder that even if I build a $500+ million revenue company that's doing business across multiple states, that I want to maintain the character and the stuff that you guys do to give back to this community. I want to make sure that I'm one of those people too, and I know that Mike does as well. So it's I just want to say thank you.
Well, no, thank you for this opportunity. One of the things I want to say before, as a closing, is always remember the people that helped you get to where you're at, including all your employees. It's just, Rich and I, we may be able to set a direction, but we're not making it happen day to day. They are.
Right.
The person at Bob Young will always have if I have a dinner or lunch with him, he was the one that said yes at Olympic. And said, I want to put my trust in you guys, and we think you can be successful. I'll never, without him, we wouldn't have started the company. So there's so many people along the way that helped us get to where we're at. It wasn't Rich and I per se. Mm-hmm. So you've got to just remember that and be humble about it, because so many things could have gone the other way.
Sure.
And we wouldn't be here. So with that, that's my closing, because I think
that's a perfect way to close. So just thanks again for being here. You can find them. We said we can find them online. If anybody wants to connect or engage with you guys on social media, it's just at Infinite Energy on Instagram.
I think so, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So definitely find them online, connect with them. And Gainesville world, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Do me a favor, leave a review. If you're listening on iTunes, go right now, leave a review. Hit us up on social media. Michael is at
at Michael Bryan Dees.
You got it.
Right? Yeah. On Instagram, I'm at Collin Austin. That's with 2 L's. Definitely, you guys send me a message. Find me on LinkedIn. Let me know what topics you guys would like to see. Anything that we could cover for you guys. And let me know just feedback. What you like, what you don't like. Because, here we are, 78 episodes in. This thing's been cranking. We're super grateful to all of our listeners. And just look forward to bringing you many, many, many more episodes. So this is the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa.
Whoa.
There it is.
We will see you later. Bye.